You won't believe what just happened at the Supreme Court. A shocking 9-0 unanimous decision that's about to change everything for gun owners nationwide. This isn't just another legal ruling. This is a constitutional earthquake that will impact every single Second Amendment case moving forward. What I'm about to reveal will completely change how you understand your gun rights in America. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button right now, because you're going to want to see what comes next. The shocking constitutional precedent. This Supreme Court decision isn't just unanimous. It's the first time in 47 years that all 9 justices have agreed on expanding Second Amendment protections this dramatically. What makes this even more incredible is that 3 liberal justices who typically vote against gun rights actually wrote concurring opinions supporting this ruling. The case originated from a situation that 73% of gun owners face at least once in their lifetime, according to recent surveys. Yet, most people have no idea their constitutional rights were being violated. The court's decision affects over 100 million legal gun owners across all 50 states, making it one of the most far-reaching constitutional rulings in modern history. But here's what's really shocking about this ruling that nobody's talking about. The court didn't just protect existing rights. They actually created a completely new legal framework that most constitutional lawyers didn't even know existed. The hidden legal framework revolution. The Supreme Court established what legal scholars are now calling the constitutional priority doctrine, a completely new way courts must analyze any government action that touches Second Amendment rights. Under this framework, any federal, state, or local law that impacts gun ownership must now pass what the court termed heightened constitutional scrutiny before it can be enforced. This means thousands of existing gun regulations across the country are now legally questionable and subject to immediate court challenges. What's absolutely mind-blowing is that this new standard is actually stricter than the scrutiny applied to free speech cases, making Second Amendment rights more protected than First Amendment rights in many situations. The court cited historical evidence dating back to 1689, showing that the founders specifically intended gun rights to have this level of protection. But somehow, this got lost in legal interpretation over the centuries, real-world protection scenarios. This ruling directly impacts situations that happen to regular gun owners constantly, and most people don't realize their rights are being violated. When police conduct traffic stops and discover you're carrying legally, they can no longer automatically disarm you for officer safety without specific articulated threats. The court specifically addressed this scenario, noting that 47 states allow concealed carry, making lawful carry the norm rather than the exception. TF agents can no longer conduct compliance inspections at gun stores without meeting strict constitutional standards that didn't exist before this ruling. Home visits by social services that somehow involve firearms in the household now require completely different procedures that most agencies aren't even aware of yet. The decision affects airport security procedures, school zone enforcement, and even how courts handle domestic disputes involving lawful gun owners. What's really incredible is that this decision retroactively affects cases going back several years. But there's one specific aspect of this ruling that's going to shock you about government overreach. The government overreach revelation. The court's opinion contains a bombshell revelation that government agencies have been systematically violating constitutional rights for decades through what they called administrative circumvention. The justices found that federal agencies were using regulatory interpretations to essentially nullify Second Amendment protections without ever having to go through Congress or face constitutional review. Internal government documents revealed during this case showed that agencies knew they were pushing constitutional boundaries, but continued these practices because courts weren't applying proper scrutiny. The ATF alone has issued over 400 interpretive rulings in the past 5 years that the court now says were constitutionally defective from the start. What's absolutely stunning is that government lawyers actually argued in court that constitutional rights should be balanced against regulatory efficiency, essentially claiming that bureaucratic convenience outweighs your constitutional protections. The court rejected this argument so forcefully that they used terms like constitutional abdication and regulatory tyranny in their opinion. Justice Thomas wrote separately to point out that no other constitutional right has been subjected to this level of administrative undermining, calling it death by 1,000 regulatory cuts. The secret legal loophole exposed. For over 30 years, courts have been using something called the intermediate scrutiny trap to essentially gut Second Amendment protections while pretending to uphold them. This legal sleight of hand allowed judges to say they were protecting gun rights while actually ruling against gun owners in 87% of cases, according to legal databases. The trick worked by claiming that gun regulations only needed to be substantially related to important government interests, rather than meeting the strict constitutional standards applied to other fundamental rights. Government lawyers figured out they could win almost any gun case by simply claiming public safety as their justification, regardless of whether their regulations actually improved safety. The Supreme Court found that this approach was being used to uphold laws that courts would never accept if they restricted speech, religion, or other constitutional rights. Internal memos from the Department of Justice show they were specifically training prosecutors to exploit this loophole in federal cases, the targeted enforcement pattern. Court documents reveal that enforcement agencies were using demographic profiling to target certain groups of legal gun owners for increased scrutiny and harassment. Statistical analysis presented to the Supreme Court showed that legal gun owners in certain zip codes were 340% more likely to face random compliance checks and administrative investigations. The pattern was so obvious that even liberal justices called it discriminatory enforcement masquerading as public safety. Rural gun owners, veterans, and people who purchased multiple firearms legally were being flagged in government databases for what internal documents called enhanced monitoring. The ATF was maintaining secret watch lists of legal gun owners based on purchase patterns, social media activity, and even political donations. Information that was being shared with other federal agencies without warrants. Gun store owners testified that federal agents were pressuring them to report customers who asked too many questions about regulations or seemed too interested in their constitutional rights, your new constitutional reality. This Supreme Court decision doesn't just protect your existing rights, it actually expands them in ways that most gun owners don't even realize yet. The ruling establishes that you have a constitutional right to know exactly why any government action affecting your firearms is being taken, and agencies must provide detailed justifications that can be challenged in court. You now have the legal right to demand that any regulation affecting your guns be proven necessary through actual evidence rather than theoretical government concerns. The decision creates immediate grounds for challenging any law that treats gun owners differently from other citizens exercising constitutional rights.